Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. We're good now? Yeah, that's better. Thank you very much. We had a technical issue there. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, July 10th, 2023? Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion to adopt the following minutes? Public hearing meeting of Monday, June 26, 2023. Regular council meeting of Monday, June 26, 2023. Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Blissett, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving into delegations, we have one delegation tonight. We have Danica White and Ryan Dennis with BC Transit are here to discuss proposed service changes this fall. The terms of reference for the Transit Future Service Plan and the UMO fare policy changes. I understand Danica is here with us right now and Ryan's going to be joining us online. Yeah, thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening and thank you for having me. See, Ryan is there. Go to the next slide. Next slide. So it's been a while since anyone from BC Transit has been in front of this council, so I'll start with a brief refresher on BC Transit's partnership model, as well as an update on how Cranbrook Transit is performing before I get into some of these enhancement initiatives that are bringing me here today. So each initiative is quite substantive, and I will be covering a fair amount of content in a brief time, so I'll welcome questions about any part of the presentation, the beginning, or these initiatives at the end.
So Danica, you good with 20 minutes? Okay, thank you.
So I'm Danica White, the Government Relations Manager for the Thompson-Kootenay region. I'm the main point of contact for local government partners, and I'm supported by a team of subject matter experts, including Ryan Dennis, who's the Director of Revenue Development, who will be speaking about the UMO electronic fare program. Over the last several months, I've been working closely with Charlotte, Mark, and Tina from your administration, as well as your transit advisor from Toop Consulting, to plan improvements to Cranbrook Transit. I'm based out of the BC Transit's head office in Victoria, and I travel frequently through the Kootenays. And I've had the pleasure of meeting several of you at some of the last local government association meetings here in Cranbrook and in Kimberley. So it's nice to see you again. So BC Transit is the provincial crown agency charged with coordinating the delivery of public transit across the province of BC, with the exception of the Greater Vancouver area, which is delivered by TransLink. With the current partnership model, BC Transit coordinates services and works closely with local governments such as yourself, local operators, and the provincial government. As you're aware, public transit is highly subsidized, and the biggest benefit of the BC Transit model is the funding formula. In terms of funding, we have two main formulas. For conventional transit, which is your fixed route transit, the province covers 46.7% of operational funds, and the municipal share is the remaining sort of about 53%. For custom transit or handy-dart, which is the door-to-door service for registered participants, the province provides a higher proportion, 66.7% of operating funds, and the municipal share covers the remainder. I'll also mention that local government retains 100% of transit revenues to also help offset some of these operational costs. So under the shared services model, BC Transit provides funding, planning, scheduling, marketing, fleet and asset management support, as well as contract administration services for each system. And this Transit Future Service Plan that I'll be speaking to shortly will be produced as a result of the role that BC Transit has in planning. Local governments have a big role in transit service as well, including maintenance of transit infrastructures like bus shelters. Although BC Transit provides the support and expertise in planning and scheduling, local governments determine service levels and set fares and transit priorities. We typically subcontract the operations of our transit systems to a third-party operating company who's responsible for the on-the-ground delivery of transportation services, managing the transit operators or the bus drivers, any collective bargaining negotiations, as well as the day-to-day customer service. So I just want to quickly go over how ridership was impacted through the pandemic. So this is a province-wide sort of snapshot of transit ridership over the last 4 years. And you can see the line at the top from 2019 sort of set our baseline or sort of normal pre-pandemic ridership. And we keep comparing ridership levels to those 2019 levels. So you can see in 2020, sort of at the beginning of the year, and on the left is January and on the right is December. So around March, you see this big dip in transit ridership, which is related to the pandemic. And then every year, ridership has been improving steadily. The other big dip you'll see around week 34 correlates with when school and post-secondary starts up in September. So we anticipate that most of the larger systems will be fully recovered sometime this year. Some of our rural and smaller systems have been taking a little bit longer to fully recover, and they're averaging about 70% recovery in 2022. So the best resource for transit information is the BC Transit website. It has information on fares, holiday schedules, map, contact info for customers who need support with things like lost and found or getting registered for HandyDart. It's also where customers can sign up to receive email alerts whenever there might be a disruption to regular service or an opportunity for local public engagement, which will be coming up in the fall. So your transit system is, transit systems are primarily costed and compared by the number of service hours that the buses are in service each year. So Cranbrook Transit currently provides 12,000 service hours on your conventional or fixed route system and 4,700 hours on your HandyDart system. The transit system is available 7 days a week with the exception of statutory holidays, and it's delivered by Next Gen Transit with a fleet of 9 vehicles. I understand the city has also launched a rural transit survey to seek public's feedback regarding regional connections. Thought I'd mention this, that there's a few that already exist that are delivered by BC Transit through partnerships with other local governments and Interior Health, but they certainly can benefit residents of Cranbrook as well. So these routes have been established as health connections routes, and they provide accessible transportation options for non-emergency medical appointments for residents to come from these communities into Cranbrook for medical support. But the service is open to anybody if there is space available. So for your ridership in Cranbrook, it's still recovering from pre-pandemic levels. It's at about, I'd say, 80% recovery. Over 168,000 rides were provided in the last year, which is higher than in 2021, but there's still a little ways to go. And as I mentioned, these are a pretty common ridership trend in smaller cities and rural communities. Transit continues to be an essential service for many people in the community, and our ongoing initiatives that I'll be talking to you about today are aiming to boost ridership and make transit more reliable and a convenient source or mode of transportation. So there's 4 improvement initiatives aimed to boost ridership, and I'll note that there's no incremental costs associated with any of them. So the first is NextRide. BC Transit has successfully launched NextRide. It's automatic vehicle location technology in 27 regional transit systems across BC, including Cranbrook. It was implemented about a year ago. It's like having GPS technology on all of your buses. as well as automatic passenger counters on the doorways. So from a customer-facing perspective, customers can use the Transit app. If you go into your app, it's that sort of sideways S symbol. There's also some other transit planning apps that other people might prefer. But they get to see real-time bus locations along routes and predicted arrival times at any stops. And a lot of people are familiar with this. It's the same kind of technology that is used with apps like Uber or other rideshare technologies. So these are a few screen grabs that I took on my phone from the Cranbrook Transit system. Customers can see which bus routes are nearby their current location, where the current bus is, as well as the schedule for upcoming trips. So in addition to making transit an easier choice for customers, we're also getting lots of really valuable data from this technology. So this shows ridership information by transit route. So previous studies have shown that ridership was pretty focused on 2 routes, the 1 and the 5. But boarding data from the last year since we've had this technology has showed that Route 1 is still the highest performer, but other routes such as the 7 and the 14 are becoming increasingly important. Keep in mind that this data hasn't been corrected for service level. So routes like the 20, which only runs on Sundays, and routes like the number 4 or Slaterville that only runs 4 times a day do have lower ridership. So the data also revealed that most buses aren't able to keep to their schedule. So thanks to this Next Ride technology, we've been able to analyze the system and better understand some of the comments that we've been hearing from customers over the years. So this pie chart shows on-time performance within 1 minute of the schedule, and you can see that over half of the trips are running late. And this is important because the Cranbrook Transit system is built around a pulse system, because we know that a lot of customers rely on transfers at the downtown exchange to get them from one location to their final destination. And the pulse system provides conveniently timed connections at the downtown exchange that give riders, based on the schedule, 1 or 2 minutes to transfer from one bus to another. So it becomes very important if your bus is even a minute or a minute and a half late. So we've also been able to dive deeper into the data. This is another fun data output called a runtime analysis. I don't expect anyone to understand it too well, but it's one of the tools that our transit schedulers use to build a bus schedule. So this is 6 months of data from the route number 5, the college trip. Morning trips are on the left, afternoon and evening trips are towards the right. And each blue dot indicates one sample, so one trip performed on one day. And the solid black line shows the 13 minutes that the schedule allows that trip to run. So every blue line above that every blue dot above that black line shows that that trip is taking longer than 13 minutes to complete. And as you can see, the majority of trips are taking long. Sometimes early in the morning or particularly later in the evening, 13 minutes is completely adequate, but for the majority of the day, 13 minutes isn't adequate for that vehicle or for that bus to complete the trip. I'd also like to note that this doesn't show vehicle speed as part of the analysis, and we all know what happens when people are running behind schedule. So with that, I'm pleased to let you know that we have taken all of this sort of new data from Next Ride, and we have used it to develop a new baseline schedule that will be implemented after Labor Day on September 5th. So a new rider's guide with route maps and a preview schedule will be made available in advance so people can start planning their trips. So the new schedule will reset this pulse system around a time frame that is more operationally feasible. It will mean reliable and safe transit service for customers. So buses will be on time without the drivers having to speed or rush, which translates to better customer service, especially for riders with mobility challenges that might need additional time to board the bus or get settled in their seat. It'll provide a consistent year-round schedule. Currently, you have two schedules, one that runs during post-secondary sort of school year, and then one that runs during the summer. The new schedule will be year-round, which is easier for riders to interpret. More time has been scheduled for routes 1, 2, 5, 7, and 14. So by giving each of these trips more time, it does mean that throughout the course of a day, there are fewer of these trips available. So the frequency is less. Routes 3 and 7 will run every day of the week and will replace the Route 20, which only operates on Sundays. So the coverage is still the same, but you'll have one less route. So it'll also be easier for customers to interpret the schedule. And if you're used to taking the number 3 during the week, you'll still take the number 3 on the weekend. Route 4, the Slaterville route, which you saw earlier is one of the lower performing routes, is being extended to the Walmart Superstore Plaza, which we know is one of the top destinations for riders. And hopefully this will improve the performance of that route over time. And the new schedule will also better align with school bell times and provide more service to the hospital. So the communication strategy will involve media advisories, some proactive media outreach, boosted social media posts on Twitter and Facebook, a radio ad campaign, interior bus cards so that riders can see changes ahead of time, advisories at the Downtown Transit Exchange, and additional training for transit drivers who we know are often the first point of contact for customers. So resetting the baseline schedule so that it's operationally feasible and providing safe, reliable service will set us up for success when we start exploring more significant changes to route coverage, service span, or introducing new things like digital on demand. So with a stable base schedule, we're better positioned to change routes that aren't performing well or consider layering on additional service in the future. And all of this is part of the strategic plan that will be developed over the next year or so that I'll get into next. So starting this summer, a Transit Future Service Plan will be developed by BC Transit in collaboration with the City of Cranbrook. It will include system evaluation and route performance and will present service scenarios for the next 1 to 5 years with a focus on strategies to optimize existing transit resources. It will also chart a path for service expansions aimed at meeting the needs of Cranbrook in the years to come as resources become available. So the development of the plan will be collaborative and will have extensive input from partners, including city administration, Next Gen Transit, as well as key stakeholders and the local community. Council will be engaged at key milestones throughout the development of the strategic plan, which typically takes about a year to complete. Public engagement is targeted for the fall, which will capture student riderships and enable us to get feedback about the new schedule. So the results of the engagement will be reported to Council, and your feedback will inform the service priorities that will get integrated into the plan. Once the plan is drafted, it will be brought back to Council for approval. And the process is designed to be a collaborative so that the final plan is well aligned with the goals and objectives of the city. Final plans are made public, and it will be used by BC Transit and city staff over the next several years to guide system changes or any additional investment. The strategic plan is non-binding, and the City of Cranbrook retains full authority to manage the implementation of the plan. And in the future, if we are proposing to implement any recommendations from the plan, such as introducing new transit service to a new community, BC Transit requires Council approval of any investments of that nature. So I'd come back to you for any approval to implement any aspects of the plan that have an investment component. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Ryan Dennis, to speak about UMO, the electronic fare collection program that we're also introducing to Cranbrook to make it easier for people to choose transit.
Thank you, Danica, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity to come and speak about our UMO electronic fare collection system project. UMO is being introduced to replace the current technology that we use, which is admittedly very dated and not meeting the needs of BC Transit, our partners, and our riders. We are leaning towards an approach where people can use items that they carry on themselves on the regular basis. And one of the main outcomes that we're looking to achieve out of this is increased convenience for our riders, as well as improved data for us to inform decision making. There will be a dedicated call center to support UMO and our riders. And really, we're looking to make choosing transit more convenient to reduce the barriers to access that our current fare payment technology includes. But importantly, cash will remain an option for those riders who need to or choose to use it. So UMO will have several components that will be visible to our customers. The first will be the UMO mobile app. People will be able to download the app, purchase their fare products, and use the app to redeem their fare products on the bus. For those riders who do not want to use the app or cannot use the app, there is a reloadable UMO card. It will be available through vendor locations in your community and can also be managed through an accompanying website. We will be installing new hardware on the buses, which is where people will present their phone or their card for validation. And in the future, we will be accepting credit and debit payments on board as well. It's important to note that UMO is replacing the current technology, so there will be a transition window in which both are enabled. However, we will be working away from the current magstripe passes and paper tickets. When we launch UMO, we will be doing engagement in your community as well. There is a dedicated engagement plan for Cranbrook. It'll be a mix of in-person engagement by our project team members, as well as information, marketing, and communications through a variety of channels. With UMO comes some changes to fare policy that we're looking to introduce as well. There are several universal policies that we are putting into place to support the effective management of UMO and to make sure that the customer experience is consistent, predictable, and solid. So the first one is a universal refund policy. There's also an expiration policy on products that don't currently have an expiration policy on them, as well as a universal transfer policy. We are also looking for your approval on a new 30-day pass. This is a slightly more flexible version of your current monthly pass product, in which a customer would be able to purchase that product and start using it right away, rather than waiting for the start of a calendar month. In the future, we will also work with you on a fare review. That is a review of your current fare structure to see if there's opportunities to improve it, meet the needs of your riders, and then also importantly, use it as a tool to fund transit. And UMO gives us further ability to support partnerships with different agencies, whether it be nonprofits or similar, to offer transit products to riders who require that support. And with that, I think we are open to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Councillors, questions? Councillor Setsky.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering why BC Transit doesn't go to credit and debit cards right away, rather than UMO is kind of an interim, seems to be an interim step.
I'll let Ryan handle that.
Yeah, thank you, Danica. So they are one and the same. So we need to introduce major components of the UMO technology in order to be able to accept credit and debit payments. The reason that there's a delay is because accepting those types of payments on board come with very stringent and controlled certification processes, something called Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. And so we need to get the technology introduced first and then go through that process to be able to accept those credit and debit payments. We also don't expect to be able to offer all products. So thinking of your 30-day pass, that is not something that we would necessarily look to support with credit or debit payments. Those are more targeted for your casual or infrequent user.
Supplementary.
A quick follow-up. Thank you, Mayor. When you're looking at improvements, how much of your discussion comes with the transit drivers in terms of what they think would improve service in general? So do you have regular discussions with the drivers?
Yes, one of my colleagues, he works very closely with Next Gen Transit as the operating company. We hear from them all the time, and one of the, I guess they have been telling us about the challenges of the current schedule for quite some time now, and there hasn't been any way of really validating that until we had Next Ride in place to actually show the data behind some of their concerns or some of their, I'd say, habits, like tending to be rushed or sometimes having less than ideal customer service. So we work with them very closely. Some of their suggestions, like extending the number 4 to Walmart and making sure that we can do that within the sort of current allocation of service hours. We work very closely with them to make sure that these changes are operationally feasible and that they support them, because they do know the customers very well.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. It looks like it is the responsibility of the local government to set fares, manage the sale of fare products. Just curious, I think for adults, it's $2.25 in Cranbrook. How does that compare with other communities? Are we kind of in the middle? Should we be adjusting our fare before this new program comes into play?
I think it compares quite well. I don't have the data in front of me for all the rest of the systems, but about $2 a ride is fairly standard.
Yeah.
If I may, it would be something that you are relatively comparable to a number of transit systems of your size, but that doesn't mean that there isn't merit in taking a look at fares and seeing if there are improvements that could be made.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further from council? Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. And I do think one thing that where we have an influence is in supporting multifamily housing development along our transit routes. Because just anecdotally, you see more people using the bus, say where the Innes Avenue development is, where there's other multifamily residences. So I would hope that you should see an increase in 23 just because of the housing developments. And we just approved another multifamily development along that same route. That's the number 3. And that has potential for improving, well, quality of life issues, but also improving our transit system and ridership. So that is something that we do consider when we're making zoning changes, where the transit is. So just a comment, really.
Yeah, good point. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. Hi again. I was expecting Councillor Bissett to bring up when are you going to be electrifying the fleet, but we'll save that question for another time. So the survey that you're planning on conducting, is it going to be for existing users and non-users here in Cranbrook?
Yes, it would target existing users as well as what we call future riders.
Yes.
So there's a couple different ways that we'll do that. One of my colleagues will be in town as well, doing some in-person engagement, riding the buses, talking to customers at the downtown exchange or on the buses. And then we'll also use social media and newspapers and other means to inform the community about an online survey or any pop-up sort of kiosks or sort of town hall type opportunities with key stakeholders or the public. So we do want to get the voice of the whole community so that we can review services and make sure that we are looking at ways to entice more people to use transit, or how we can change transit so that it becomes more effective for people that aren't using it currently.
Thank you. And of course, the goal is to how do we increase ridership, efficiency, effectiveness, quality. So what would be some of like the key questions that would be in the survey?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
The survey hasn't been developed yet. We're sort of targeting having it completed and out in the fall. And when it is drafted, it is something I would certainly work on and share with your administration. And we can make sure that you have a review of it. Is that something that you'd like?
Further? Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. You probably don't remember, but you and I spoke back at the Local Government Leadership Academy, and we were discussing ways to increase ridership, and you mentioned at that time that one of the key strategies is to increase the frequency of buses coming on the routes. So is that something that you might be discussing, our staff in the future?
Yes, that is one of the things that will certainly be, considered as we're going forward with this strategic plan. Increasing frequency usually comes with additional resources. And right now, I think we're really focused on optimizing the existing resources, as well as looking for opportunities for when the city is ready and resources are available, what that could look like to improve the system even more.
Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you. And
Okay.
we've had this question before, but are there any communities in British Columbia that are doing some pilots? We use the word pilots, it seems to be the buzzword, for non-fixed route on-demand services?
Yes, BC Transit is preparing to launch the first pilot for a digital on-demand service. Right now, we're going through the sort of selection process for a potential vendor, and it will be implemented. It's targeted for next summer in a neighborhood in Kelowna. Shortly after that gets implemented, we'll start reviewing that, seeing how it works, taking a lot of lessons learned, and then making a plan for how it can potentially be implemented in other communities.
Thank you. And this is for like a non-fixed route service? Yes.
That's
Excellent.
correct.
Thank you.
Interesting. Anything further? No? Well, thank you very much, Danica and Ryan, for your presentation. I'm really looking forward to the future changes and improvements of our local transit system. So thanks again. We'll move into bylaws. The first bylaw for consideration tonight are official community plan amendment bylaw number 4080-2022 and zoning amendment bylaw 4081-2022 regarding Parnaby Road. These bylaws are coming back for adoption. Can I please have engineering and development service Brad Avis overview of the report, please?
Hi, through Mayor Wayne to council. Just a quick little refresher. Some of you may recall this one, some of you may not, we weren't around. So this is an application that started last year to rezone a piece of property on Parnaby Road to low density multifamily. At the time, we were still awaiting things like whether or not the sewer was going to go out, et cetera. But what has transpired since third reading is there was a bit of a delay in getting the bylaw to being able to be brought forward for adoption, namely the applicant having to work with the Ministry of Transportation through their traffic impact assessment to address what will eventually become required upgrades to the highway intersection at Parnaby Road and the highway. So with that taking some time and then working through some of the legal covenants, particularly the one identified in the report by the Ministry of Transportation, to their satisfaction in order for the bylaw to actually be approved by them. So that's why you see a bit of a lag. This is not typical for many of our rezonings, as you may know. Essentially, this bylaw will facilitate the development of about 80 low-density multifamily units in the form of townhomes and duplexes. And we now know that, as noted here in the report, there was a covenant provided by the applicant that would have restricted development, building permits and such until sewer was provided. We know the sewer is going in, so that's a big step. And then the MOTI covenant is required in order to ensure that at a certain point, those improvements to the highway are either constructed or the ministry secures the security in the amount of 125% for the cost of the improvements. And so one of the things that relies on is the staff here as part of our development process to work with the ministry and the applicant to ensure that that gets done. But other than that, I think that's the short and sweet of it.
Thanks very much, Rob. Can I get a motion that council adopt City of Cranbrook official community plan amendment bylaw number 4080-2022? Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
So how far is it from the far end of Parnaby Road to City Hall? How many kilometers away is it from here?
through the mayor to Councillor Stetsky, I actually don't have that number off the top of my head. I perhaps about 10 or 11 kilometers.
Yeah. So what troubles me about this application, it goes back to my concern around smart growth principles, also called new urbanism, also called location efficient development, where you focus on infilling closer to downtown before you start looking 10 kilometers out of town. And I know this has been around for a while. Not only we have a number of proposals waiting for increased density within the city that I would like to see proceed before I would be able to support increased density out in that direction. So my preference would be to keep this as an urban reserve for now and maybe have a look at it again in the future.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Papa.
Thank you. And Rob, I can appreciate why there was the delay in having this back. We've had all those discussions already at the first 3 readings. The utility of creating densification out at the Shadow Mountain area, and this Parnaby Road piece is part of that neighborhood development plan as part of Shadow Mountain. Shadow Mountain, including this Parnaby piece, is going to develop already through low and medium and even some higher densities out there. And I agree with your smart growth principles. We need densification right here where the city hall is, but this one's already part of that process. So in my point of view, it's a done deal as part of the neighborhood development plan out there for all of Shadow Mountain. And that's going to be an entity that's going to happen, and we'll still have the priorities of putting in densification here in our downtown area. So I appreciate why it took so long to get it back before us, but this was just to put the final stamp on this to get it going forward through the process.
Councillor Brissette.
Thank you. So when this did come up, whenever that was, not quite, about a year ago, I was against it then for the same reasons as Councillor Stetsky has mentioned. I'm still against it now. It's not a done deal. Yes, there is some single family homes out at Shadow Mountain. Yes, they have some proposals for increasing development there, and that is basically the homes out there are a done deal. But I still don't support this, and so I will be voting it against it as I did all along.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick question for Rob Begg. Since the public hearing, has the developer of this property, have they started to do any sort of construction to the road or the property?
Through the mayor to Councillor Peabody, no development work has restarted, but it's my understanding that the development permit applications for the environmentally sensitive area, wildfire, and the multifamily development permits are imminent, provided the bylaw gets adopted. So they're willing to want to move ahead, and they have engaged with our engineering department regarding the servicing requirements and how to get that done. That's my understanding.
Great. I know too, like in the last, when this came up a year ago, I was also against it. It seemed like a little bit of a big move from, urban farm to, medium to high density area. But also in discussions with you, Rob, in the past, you mentioned how if there is going to be sprawl, high density sprawl has a bit of an advantage as opposed to low density sprawl. Can you explain that again?
Sure. Again, through the mayor, one of the things that the OCP currently looks at is we talk about optimization of land and infrastructure. And one of the things that we had to take into consideration when looking at this is the fact that the decision to bring those lands into the city were made a long time ago. And so now that we have the lands, I think from a planning perspective, we should be looking at how to best use that utilization. And certainly if we stuck to low density, I think perhaps that would probably be in the long term much more negative in terms of impacts to things like land utilization and infrastructure than a higher density. This is a low density multifamily overall from a units per hectare perspective. But I think when we talk about asset management and infrastructure and those kinds of things, units and numbers pay the bills. So development ultimately has to cover that cost at some point. And so, you know, doing nothing or leaving it low density, I think from that perspective, might be more detrimental than perhaps trying to find ways to at least utilize the land that's within the city limits to the best of the ability that we have, because it is in the city. I've always said it's kind of ours. I mean, it's ours in that it's within our jurisdiction. The decision was made. And so from the planning perspective, yes, while it is a little ways away from the city center now. As we know, the residents had just approved the local area service to establish a sewer line. That becomes now an asset that has to be managed by the city in the long term. Again, money, taxes, numbers will help pay for that. And through the OCP process, now we are looking at options for what to do with that corridor between Wildstone and Shadow Mountain as well, from a development perspective, because for future growth, because those lands are quote unquote ours and they are within city limits. So I would certainly be more concerned if we were looking at applications for much lower density from a planning perspective, for sure.
Thank you for that explanation, Rob. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. From a philosophical perspective, I have great appreciation for where Councillor Stetsky and Councillor Blissett are coming from in terms of concerns around sprawl and stuff. But on a pragmatic level, we know we're in desperate need of housing, and this area is already within city limits, so with infrastructure. So for me, in this case, I have to prioritize pragmatism, that I believe we're in need of housing, and we're going to be paying for this infrastructure regardless. So we either pay for it with very low density or we have more density out there. So although I totally appreciate the broader philosophical concerns in this case, I'm inclined to support because we need housing.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Blissett, pardon me, with Councillor Ray. And your explanation, Rob, I think hit it. You know what? This property came into the city a number of years ago. It is part of Cranbrook. So now we've got a responsibility to infill. I mean, that is part of Cranbrook. We've been waiting for years and years before this development come, and even since this was brought into Cranbrook for infill. Everybody knows the acreages and the land parcels within the community that are ideal for infill development. They're privately owned. You're not going to have we cannot force private owners to develop. If they choose not to develop, we're at a standstill. We had a housing crisis a few years back for a reason. Nobody was developing. It was infill. There was land available all over Cranbrook. Nobody was doing anything. Nobody took the initiative to develop, the responsibility to develop. You know, we had Shadow Mountain and Wildstone come forward. And, you know, that spawned some development. And I think as a council, we've got a responsibility to support that. I mean, if we're going to leave that out there, make no mistake, we've got a sewer line going in now. That's going to be completed this year. We've got existing infrastructure that was put in 2006 or 2007. That is starting to age. If it's not being used and not being paid for by the residents and taxpayers out there, the citizens of Cranbrook, the core, if we want to call it, within, you know, the core of the city, we will be paying that. So, you know, I don't think we really have a choice. And I think we have a responsibility to developers. That is in the city limits of Cranbrook. It aligns perfectly with our OCP. So, you know, yeah, I have difficulty. And I certainly do appreciate, you know, Councillor Blissett's and Councillor Stetsky's position on that. But it's almost like that ship is almost sailed now. And you know what? This council didn't approve those developments or anything else. And, you know, I'm not putting anything on former councils. We've got this council has decisions to make based on what we've inherited and what we think is best for the community going forward. And you know what? I have to support this development going forward. I think it's the right thing to do. Especially, it's been off to a slow start there. Once that sewer line's in, we need some key projects to start kick that development out there. We saw what happened in Wildstone. It sat stagnant for years until a developer came in and a local builder come in and started buying it up and took some risk in there and you know, that development was approved. That's starting to pay its way now. And we're seeing it's going to be a successful development. I think we owe the same consideration to that development, or why did we bring it in? Anyways, that's my perspective on that. So, Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, I think we have a responsibility to develop the city in a responsible way, which is to really work hard on infilling what we have here in Cranbrook as a priority. And that should take precedence over building something 10 kilometers out of town if we're looking to increase places for people to live. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Further? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Two opposed, Councillor Stetsky and Councillor Blissett. The second part, can I get a motion that council adopts City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4081, 2022? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Peabody, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we have two opposed, Councillor Stetsky and Councillor Blissett. Thank you very much. The next bylaws for consideration tonight are official community plan amendment bylaw number 4120, 2023 and zoning bylaw amendment number 4121, 2023 regarding 28 11th Street South. These bylaws are coming back for adoption tonight. Can I get a motion that council adopt City of Cranbrook official community plan bylaw amendment number 4120, 2023, please? Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. Councillor Papa.
Thank you. And Councillor Stetsky, this is a perfect example to your point of infill development, and developers are still going to develop infill in downtown-ish Cranbrook, even though Shadow Mountain's going to be ongoing as well. So classic example of what you're speaking about.
And Councillor Stetsky.
Well, I don't know if we should be going back and forth, Councillor Popoff, but how many developments are we sitting here waiting to actually happen in Cranbrook already? There's a lot. This is a good one, but there are many others who we're waiting to see develop.
So this will be my last. And it's thankful to those developers that they're preparing to finally go. You're right. We're waiting on developers on all the other lands that we've zoned to medium and higher densities, and those are not developing. So while we're waiting for those to get going, this one and the Parnaby Road one are at least going to move forward. So we need housing.
Councillor Blissett.
Just because this is a good development that serves transit and densification within town doesn't discount our concerns about the development at Parnaby Road.
Further? Good discussion both ways. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Can I get a motion that council adopt City of Cranbrook zoning bylaw amendment number 4121, 2023? Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, guys. The last bylaw for consideration tonight is camping bylaw number 4123, 2023. This bylaw is coming back for adoption tonight. Can I get a motion that council adopt camping bylaw number 4123, 2023, please? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Peabody. Or, sorry, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody. Apologies.
Not directly related to this bylaw, but I just want to take advantage of having Paul here. Paul, we received a letter just questioning whether or not it'd be a good idea to provide dumpsters or porta potties at some of these encampments. Just want to get your opinion on that.
My first, so your mayor through to Councilor Peabody, the issue of dumpsters, I don't support, but just because of the issue of consistent fires, which I'm sure Fire Chief Driver can refer to. And that, you know, the other challenge with dumpsters is we have found people in the dumpsters and it causes its own liabilities and problems. And then did you ask also about water or the
Porta potties.
porta potties? The issue with the porta potties is they're very badly abused. I think those of you that have spoken to the other businesses, McDonald's, A&W, Dairy Queen, I would say it relates to their drug usage as to what happens to these bathrooms, and to have a porta potty on site leads to a whole range of issues that would require us to be on site more frequently. And so, yeah, on paper, it sounds great to have a porta potty, but even what we're seeing with the Sharps containers, which are industrially built and solid, we're having issues with them as well, right? So everything has to be very, very well thought through. But yeah, there's pros and cons to both.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I continue to have a couple of concerns around the bylaw. One is from an environmental perspective, I really don't think any of our encampments should be anywhere near Joseph Creek as it goes through the city. And secondly, I know there's additional opportunity to consult with some of the social agencies that would be appreciated. So I'm going to continue to vote no. Having said that, I absolutely understand the need to have a bylaw in place. And I'll be bringing forward a notice of motion at the end of tonight's meeting concerning our next meeting is September 11th, looking at potential amendments to the bylaw, incorporating further consultation from social service agencies, and also giving us an opportunity to look at the effectiveness of the bylaw over the next 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank you for that, Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. So after we did the last council meetings, I think it was the Kamloops CBC immediately reported on Cranbrook has passed a no camping bylaw, which will require all tents to be removed every day. That's what they said. And then there's some other false information that the Kamloops CBC was putting out on our radio. Subsequent to that, our local CBC radio reporter, she got the story right. So for the record, the bylaw allows staff to have a tent removed every day, but it's up to your discretion if you want tents and other personal equipment removed and moved every day. You have the discretion. It's not going to be an automatic every day.
Your mayor through to Council Popoff, we will be creating measurables as to, you know, how we will act on each tent. What we find right now is the majority of the people in the tents, those individuals living rough, do cooperate with the RCMP and do cooperate with bylaw and with Marcel, and are, you know, abiding by our wishes without this bylaw in place. We're down to 14 tents down at Ridgeview, which was as high as 21 at one point. And this is all just through cooperation. And that is our first choice and course of action. I just want to be careful with the word move. This camping bylaw goes through, the only moving that's taking place is up and down. That's it.
Yes.
All right. We're just taking the tent poles out of the tent and asking for them to take their personal belongings out of the tent, just as a means truly of us ensuring that what's in their tent is safe for them and safe for the general public.
Thank you for that, Paul, because I think that was what we need to get the message out into our community. When it was first reported, there was this, I think even through our social agencies, that we were going to be going around and moving the tents every day, and that's definitely not the situation. And then the other part, please, I think also in the bylaw, This is only for areas of city-owned properties. This is not intended to regulate school district properties. They have their own separate avenue to pursue school
Your
properties.
Mayor, through Council Popoff, that is correct. We will be meeting with the school. After this, the school is seen as it's public property, but it's run by let's call it a private entity, but it's seen in the court as separate, as private property, let's say. And we're going to have discussions with them on how they act, and they'll probably be acting under the Trespass Act.
Great, thanks for that clarity, Paul.
Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to touch on that same point that Councillor Popoff has alluded to, I think that's a really important distinction that this bylaw is about having the ability to ask folks to take their tent down, but it is different from bylaws in other communities. So we are not asking people to take their tent down and move it. We are only asking them to take their tent down. We have that ability. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, so your Mayor, through to Councillor Ray, that is correct.
Yeah, and I just wanted to re-emphasize that because I think there's been a bit of a lack of clarity with some of the language out in the community where the word move is being used, whereas the words we should be using are take down. So just want to be really clear about that. And then just a comment, you know, from my personal perspective, I see this as one tool in the tool belt. You know, some other initiatives that we've been able to put in place are funding the 4th watch clerk with the RCMP to hopefully allow officers to have more time being out in the community and have someone in the office who's able to do paperwork. We have our social development coordinator position in partnership with the RDAK. So this bylaw is just one more tool in the tool belt. You know, I think we all would agree with that. And again, from my perspective, you know, definitely we're approaching this with compassion for folks who are unhoused. We also are very, very mindful of public safety. And in addition, as the city, we want to be providing a safe work environment for our bylaw staff, for our emergency services staff. So, you know, it's all those considerations coming together.
And then thank you. Good conversation. Thank you for the clarification on that, Paul. Certainly, we realize that, you know, the bylaw is a policy document that the council is going to approve, and staff are going to obviously put together some operational framework, you know, around the bylaw they can work with. Ongoing, you'll be dealing with our solicitors and people in the industry that will put the framework together and how that's all going to play out. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, your Mayor. So we will be just, as I said, we will be building up measurables and just, you know, how we will start making decisions on the tents and the individuals. Again, our first priority is through their own cooperation and providing the right services so that they feel that they have the support and they can make it of their own free will to go to those supports and those services. And then, but this bylaw, as Councillor Reyes suggested, is just another tool for us to control our spaces, but also at least maintain what is happening in the tents. What should be stated is the 12 tents that we presently have at the back of the berm, you know, we're seeing fires, we're seeing deaths, we're seeing assaults. It is not a safe place for anybody to be. And this is our way of just saying to them, you know, there is other alternatives.
Thank you very much. Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. One opposed. Councillor Stetski opposed. Yes. CEO Virtual has a comment.
Thank you, Council. Just one further clarity too, when we do the media release tonight is we'd previously said in the media that the taking down of tents cannot occur during the winter months. However, that wasn't factual. We are able to take the tents down in the winter when required, same like we can in the summer. And as Council's made the point tonight, we will only be exercising that option when required, but that you'll notice the change in the wording in the media release tonight.
Right. And on behalf of council, I'd like to thank Paul and all our staff for the amount of work. I know it's been an incredible amount of work. You guys have been going on this with since February, trying to get something in place, some measures in place, so we have some form of control this summer. So thank you very much. Moving on to new business. The first item is from Engineering Development Service regarding 6th Street Northwest concept design planning and implementation study. Can I get Engineering and Development Service to provide a brief overview of the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Coming forward tonight to ask to undertake a study of 6th Street Northwest conceptual planning and design, and funded from the Capital Roads program. Now that we know how much we're spending this year on that program and the money that's left. A number of years ago, as part of the industrial development, we did undertake a conceptual design that involved 3 lanes. However, given the more intense residential development and the industrial development, we want to make sure we get it right. So we want to look at a plan that actually looks at a 4 or 5 lane cross section that incorporates the stacking issues that we're seeing along 6th right now, backing up into other intersections and stuff like that. And in addition to that, with the implementation, it's to how to phase that in, because it doesn't all have to go in at once. A number of projects are already in our DCC bylaw, but we want to, as a staff, want to change them and make sure that they meet what we're seeing for growth and increased density and infill, essentially.
Good. Thank you very much, Curtis. Can I get a motion that council authorize staff to complete the 6th Street Northwest concept design planning and implementation study, and further that council authorize the funding to be from the 2023 Capital Roads program? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Bassett. Discussion. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, I think this is great forward thinking. I'm glad this is coming forward to council, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. Curtis, I'm just looking at the map, and the shaded area encroaches into private properties. Can you talk about that, please?
Councillor Popoff, through the mayor. The shaded area was just to highlight the extents. At this time, we don't plan to go into private properties. We hope to use the existing corridor, the dedicated road, but it's to show that we're going from Industrial Road 3 to Kootenay Street. So quite a bit of the corridor.
So for the record, an engineer drew something not to scale. Okay, thank you.
Curtis, I think this is a great idea. We're certainly starting to see just, in the Slaterville area, the development up there, but we know that on Echofield Road, sooner or later, there's going to be significant development up there, and it's going to come sooner than we realize. We will be ready for it, rather than like we have in the past, trying to catch up and accommodate, that bottleneck that's going to be there. Yeah, I think this fits well with certainly our recent OCP revisions and some of the approvals we're looking at going forward. So good work. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Curtis.
Maybe Mayor Price will say I'll take responsibility for the map, because I just asked for something to be slapped together just to show council graphically where we were talking about rather than textually. So I asked for that in the last 2 minutes before it was approved.
And I drew it, so sorry.
In the future, maybe we'll have you run it by Councillor Popoff before you bring it forward, so that we. The next item is from Engineering Development Services regarding the City of Cranbrook Downtown Revitalization Master Plan. Can I ask an Engineering Development Service to provide an overview, please?
Okay, I'm like, this is one of those ones where I'm a bit shaking here, so bear with me. Council, Mayor and Council, we're here to present to you. We have the pleasure of presenting the final draft of the City of Cranbrook Downtown Revitalization Master Plan for consideration by formal endorsement. As you know, we've been through about a 2-year process on this, and this plan is our hope that it will be the guiding vision for the future of Cranbrook. And if there's any specific questions, I can certainly answer them, but this has been an ongoing project for about 2 years now. We're finally seeing it come to fruition, and I do realize there may be some questions with respect to the request for decision by council, and that council endorsed the plan, but also authorized staff to begin with implementation initiatives. And so what we meant by that was namely that there's a number of initiatives in the plan that are broken down in sort of short, medium, and long-term goals, section 5. And a lot of those initiatives we can begin working on in the near future or immediately that can start to see implementation of this plan pending council's endorsement. Things like looking at how to integrate it into the OCP review like we're doing. So we've begun looking at how we can incorporate the design guidelines, which would form the design guidelines for the development permits for commercial development, land use designations. It'll set the stage for us to continue to work and establish new or updated policies to help with implementation. Things like public art policy, for example, that needs to be updated so that when the time comes, we can certainly be ready for those types of initiatives. Working towards vibrancy, again, it's another one that we can certainly look at both from a staff perspective, and council can look at it through their budgetary process on how, what we can do to increase vibrancy in downtown to try and create that element that will eventually start to spur, revitalization initiatives. And also the document can be used to help inform things like our infrastructure planning. So with the pending hopeful endorsement of the plan and having a vision laid out, we can take that kind of that information and plug it into some of our infrastructure modeling, for example, so we can start to look at what might be required from an infrastructure perspective downtown, looking at the prospective build outs. And then we can look at and bringing that for council and, over the course of this council and the next council and going forward as part of deliberations for capital budget programs. So we can start setting priorities where council wants to see those, money spent and projects going forward. And then I guess the only other thing I'd like to touch on is this plan certainly meshes really well with the work that Darren and the Economic Development Office did in the Tourism Master Plan. While they're completely separate exercises, it's became evident through the results that there's a number of initiatives that came out of that particular plan and this one that actually mesh really well or virtually, because it could be identical. So there's initiatives that we could look at from both the tourism plan and downtown revitalization plan that we can think about working towards. Again, low-hanging fruit, maybe not large budget expenditures. Things like, wayfinding signage program, perhaps looking at the Gateway project, those kinds of things. And then I guess the last point about the authorized staff to begin implementation is, as we know, as of late, the past few years, there's been a number of opportunities where grants are announced. And so having a plan in place could potentially allow us to apply for grants. And if there were grants, for example, that fit directly within the recommendations in this plan that didn't require a financial contribution by the city, it would allow us to just go ahead and start making application for those grants without having to come back to council for a resolution every time. And so, just building on that, I think it will allow us to start doing that as well. And then of course, if there were, financial contributions, et cetera, then those would come back for budget deliberations. But certainly there are opportunities through provincial and federal grants that we have seen now that directly relate to things like revitalization, housing, all kinds of different topics, of which this plan addresses a number of segments of that. So with that, I guess I can open up the floor to questions by council.
I'll call the question first. No,
Sure.
to question. Can I get a motion that council endorse the City of Cranbrook Downtown Revitalization Master Plan and further authorize staff to begin with implementation initiatives identified in the plan? Mover, Councillor Blissett, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you, Rob, for all your work on this, and I certainly support it. I do think, though, the real work is going to come with the follow-through. Whether this council will follow through and support the initiatives that lead to downtown revitalization, densification, the improving of infrastructure downtown, the accommodation of multifamily development close to the city center. So that's the real work. And we can't talk out of both sides of our mouths. And so that's what we have to do. City staff have to do it, and we also have to do it as a council.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yes, thank you. Very exciting plan and very exciting future potentially for Cranbrook. As Councillor Blissett said, we do have to make sure that it happens. The only comment I had from one individual was that climate change doesn't show up as a word until somewhere after page 100. But when you look at the initiatives in here, many of them really will be very helpful in combating climate change, whether it's densification or transportation, et cetera. So very exciting plan, and certainly I know this council is very keen on getting it implemented and working through our CAO. We hope to make it happen as best we can over the next 3.5 years or so. But thank you for your work.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Rob, you must be quite relieved to finally see this come for final approval. Yeah. It's almost like you completed a thesis here. Yeah. But one of my, I guess one of my favorite parts about this, I guess, would be the integrated infrastructure replacement prioritization map, which just shows basically the water mains and the sanitary mains and the storm mains and where they fall on the priority list. And the next step of implementing this into the OCP, will that become part of a bigger map? Do you foresee that happening as far as like a colored prioritization map as far as utilities go?
So through the mayor to Councillor Peabody, I think from an OCP perspective, our first goal is going to be looking at the integration of the land use designations, ensuring that the OCP will facilitate the need for the change for zoning that will help implement the land use component. The infrastructure maps for an OCP are at a much higher level. However, we are looking at options as we move forward in terms of implementation into the OCP, whether or not we could perhaps bring the downtown revite plan into the OCP as a specific neighborhood plan, so which those would be integrated. Certainly from the infrastructure review process, that information now, along with the future build out, can be used at a more technical level where we can input that data into some of the modeling that we have. And then when it comes time to start looking at those infrastructure prioritizations and what impacts there needs to be from a financial perspective and a priority setting, of course, from a council, because what downtown is one area of the entire city. It'll allow us to do that too, now that we have a more kind of firm vision. And then certainly, but having said that, if there are major trunk lines that warrant inclusion into the OCP on the sewer utility maps or the water utility maps in the OCP, that would be done as part of that process. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Pawlowski.
Yes, thank you. Congratulations, Rob. So I agree. This has to be this council's top priority and the council's for the next 20 years top priority as we go forward. But this historic downtown is crucial for the overall success of our community to grow and prosper. On the many pages, it shows about specific styles and types of development, and part of it was, I forget which zone color it was, but recommended maximum up to 6 to 7 floors. So, and it'll get embedded in the OCP and everything else. So a developer comes and says, okay, I want to put it on an extra floor above what's in the plan. Is that an automatic no, or does that come back to council for consideration? How does that play out?
Sure, Mayor and Council. Again, so this is not a bylaw, so it's a living document. So this is something that as we go forward for the future of Cranbrook, if things change, dynamics can change. We can look at what might need to be done from here. The portions that are embedded into a bylaw, these were recommendations that were made, and certainly we will have to adapt or react to applications, proposals that may come in. And in some cases, it might warrant a bylaw change, for example, if it made sense. Again, this is a guiding document. We will look at establishing the recommendations by bylaw. Bylaws can be varied. Things like height can be varied, or zoning changes could take place. So certainly those types of things would be and could be looked at by this council and a future council should the need arise. It's not set in stone, and bylaws can always be amended as this plan exists. It is a living document, and that's why I always like to try and refer to it as. it is a living document, and I think the one thing I'd like to highlight, just as in terms of going forward and identifying that council have it as a priority. We did indicate from at least staff's perspective how this plan aligns with the strategic goals of this council. And certainly, we think it hits a lot of those buttons. And so, at least for the next 3 years, and I suspect that these types of strategic goals will continue to live on in the future. They mesh well, and so that will hopefully allow us to see this to continue to progress and have action on. It's not going to be overnight. There's no end goal to revitalization. I think I mentioned that to council. It's an ongoing thing.
Yes.
That's made up of many different components.
And just one quick question. Again, I don't know what page it is, but it's showing the streetscape for Baker, and you got the expanded sidewalks, and then you got some greenery, and then you've got bicycle lanes on both sides, parking, and then finally driving. That's fine in the summertime. What's the winter plan with those bicycle lanes between the sidewalk and the road and the parking? How does that play out over the winter time?
Sure. So again, what's in this plan is at the conceptual level. And so what the planner is recommending is that when we look forward thinking in terms of how we're going to plan our future city infrastructure, we use the concept of complete streets. Now, obviously, the elements that are presented in the plan are what make up complete streets: pedestrian-friendly, wide sidewalks, bicycle lanes. But these are they're just conceptual. A lot more work needs to be done when it comes time at the time when we know we're going to be going in the ground. It's like we're going to get into Baker Street. We'll get into a lot more detailed planning and as to how we can translate these recommendations into a solution that fits Cranbrook. And certainly being a winter city is one of them. And so, perhaps if they were separated bike lanes with a curb, that might not be great from a transportation perspective in the winter. But again, it's conceptual, and then the fine details will be ironed out at the time of planning and implementation for the future.
Excellent. So year-round conceptual. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great report, Rob, and thank you very much for those explanations. Anything further, council? No, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Go home and have a glass of wine. The next item is from Fire and Emergency Services regarding the budget amendment for wildfire equipment. Can I ask Fire and Emergency Services to provide a brief overview of the report, please? Floor is yours, Scott.
Yes, Mayor Price through the council. So I'm sitting here today with a request for a $40,000 transfer from Wildfire Mitigation Reserve to operational accounts for the 2023 year. I do this out of a need to keep pace with the increasing challenges that we're seeing in the wildfire mitigation world, both in the suppression side and some of our planning and mitigation activities that we're doing on the landscape. So as everybody is aware, those challenges are coming at the province of British Columbia fast and heavy right now in the summer season, but wildfire is one of those things that we're tackling year round in the city of Cranbrook. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. And in order to address some of the supply chain demands, the increasing need to do mitigation work on the ground, and our response needs to be part of the provincial wildfire response system, whereas the city of Cranbrook would be in the structural defense teams and part of a larger system in the province. We need to prepare our equipment and our staff to be ready to do that in the long term. That's our surge capacity. If we ever do have a wildfire in our neighborhood or in our neighbor's neighborhood, we need those requirements on our apparatus. So it's not a really large number, but it is what we need to do to get ahead. If we have a large wildfire season, we'd be down a lot of equipment at the end of the season and having to replace it. And in order to get sort of to uplift our capabilities operationally and in the mitigation world, is we just need this kind of mid-season lift. Hopefully it gets us to a place where we can just continue on next year.
Thank you, Scott. Can I get a motion that council amend the budget to transfer $40,000 from the wildfire mitigation reserve to the fire protection mitigation account? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Blissett. Discussion, Councillor Stetsky.
Just quickly, what kind of equipment are you looking at replacing or buying?
So we're not looking at replacing equipment yet. We haven't had a heavy wildfire season, but what we do need to do is we do need to have the supplies required by the interagency agreement between the BC Wildfire Service and the municipalities across the province to have enough hose, nozzles, adapters that will work with the wildfire system so that communities can engage with each other when we arrive on scene. So they've laid out a list of stuff that needs to be on our bush trucks and our tenders. We need we do need to purchase quite a bit of equipment to meet that list so that we are ready to deploy with those other agencies that might come to help us or that we might go to help. Yeah, thank you.
Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Next item is from Corporate Services regarding Cranbrook Transit Enhancement Initiatives. Can I ask Corporate Services to provide a brief overview of the report? Tina.
So this report goes alongside the presentation that was conducted by Danica of BC Transit. And so they provided the majority of the information. So we're just looking for council to receive the transit UMO and fare policy updates and to direct administration to work with transit to work on the terms of reference for the transit future service plan, and to also approve the following fare policies to prepare for the UMO electronic fare collection launch. So that would be including the adoption of the 30-day pass fare in place of existing monthly pass fare, and a revised transfer policy for the universal refund policy for use with transfers that are available for use on the next connecting bus within 90 minutes of the original fare payment or product use.
Gotcha. Thanks, Tina.
Mhm.
Can I get a motion that council receive the BC Transit UMO and fare policy updates as presented July 10th, 2023 for information? Councillor Blissett, Councillor Ray, discussion, all in favor? That's carried. Can I get a motion that council direct administration to work with BC Transit to finalize the project terms of reference and subsequently collaborate on the development of the Cranbrook Transit Future Service Plan? Mover, Councillor Blissett, Councillor Stetsky, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion that council approve the following fare policies to prepare for the UMO electronic fare collection launch? Number one, adoption of the 30-day pass fare in place of existing monthly pass fare. And number two, a revised transfer policy being universal refund policy for use with transfers are available for use on the next connecting bus within 90 minutes of the original fare payment or product use. Come over, please. Councillor Bassett, Councillor Peabody, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tina. The last item of new business from Corporate Services regarding the flag policy number 20-02. Can I ask Corporate Services to provide a brief overview of this report, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Flag policy number 2002 has been revised as it was identified when we were doing our review of policies. So this will provide guidance for flying flags at all city-owned buildings, facilities, and parks. And really it's ensuring that we're following appropriate half-masting protocols. This newest update provides discretion to the CAO as to when the city will half-mast, maintains the ongoing relationship that we have with the Royal Canadian Legion and Rotary Park, as well as formally delegating responsibility amongst our departments, which was the common practice amongst the city previously. We also included best practices from the Government of Canada, Canadian Heritage on flag guidelines, handling, maintenance, and protocols. And as noted, we will have this policy be reviewed every 3 years, so it makes sure that it remains current and up to date.
Thank you, Bradley. Could I get a motion that council approve the new flag policy number 20-02? Mover, please. Councillor Bassett, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody.
Thank you. Just one question. 7.2 lists when the city will lower flags. And I noticed on there, it says a city employee, which of course would include our fire department, but did not include the RCMP. And then we go down to 7.4 says the RCMP manager may lower flags to half-mast as a sign of respect. So does that include every flag in the city then, that the RCMP, I mean, obviously we would lower our flags to half-mast if unfortunate happens to an RCMP member. So just wondering if
Yeah.
that should have been listed under 7.2, or are we okay with 7.4?
We're okay with both provisions. I'm sorry, Councillor Sutsky through the mayor. We're okay with both provisions, and again, as noted, it would be at the discretion of the CEO as well. So if this was going to be an incident with the RCMP where there was this unfortunate incident to happen, then there most likely would be lowering half-mast for all throughout the city. But it gives the RCMP and the fire department designation in a special instance for maybe somebody outside the municipality as well, for special recognition.
Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is regard to half-masting of the flags as well. And maybe this is being done already, but is it possible to have a media release go out onto social media when the flags are being lowered half-mast? Because there's just been instances where it seems like members of council are unaware why the flag is at half-mast, and it'd be nice to have that information when it's happening.
Councillor Peabody through for the mayor. That's absolutely something that we can talk with our communication staff, myself and Chris, and with CEO Vircho. When those instances do arise, we can notify. And as noted in the policy as well, there is a provision where when we are half-masting, internal staff are being communicated on when and why. And so that then will prompt or trigger the event of us doing maybe a social media post or a media release in the future. So it's not as much that it's designated specifically, they're going to do a media release in this policy, is noted internally by staff that we can do those notifications for the public.
Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Bradley. Next up, administrative updates. 10.1, we have 3 administrative updates tonight. The first is from Fire and Emergency Services regarding a second quarter update for 2023. Chief Driver, can you provide us with your update, please?
Yes, Mayor Price through to council. So just coming into the second quarter of the year, we're wanted to report to council before we go out to the public tomorrow morning, just to let council know that we're continuing to accelerate in our call volume. We saw a 13% increase in total calls in our second quarter over the first quarter that we reported in 2023. So this is the second iteration of a quarterly update, and we're seeing a 13% increase over the first quarter of the year. To compare spring, which is quarter 2 over spring of last year, we're 55% over the call volume for last year. But I will say that we did have a slower spring last year, and we're having quite a bit busier spring this year. So we're seeing similar call volume increases on our fire rescue side of business as we are seeing on our pre-hospital care side of business. So we're still sitting at 35% fire and rescue and 65% pre-hospital care calls. A large driver on the pre-hospital care side this quarter was overdose related calls. We had more than 70 of those this quarter. And unfortunately, that's attached to quite a high number of outdoor and miscellaneous fires that we're seeing as well. So it's not a great way to report calls, but it's in the provincial system, and those outdoor and miscellaneous calls are unattended campfires, uncontrolled rubbish fires, dumpster fires, car fires, wildfires. So it's a big category of catch-all, but it is focused around our hard-to-house population and some of the high-risk behaviors that they carry out.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, in regards to the overdose calls, does fire and ambulance both attend to those?
Correct. Those are red coded calls. Or purple coded calls. So they're life critical. Every second counts on those calls. So BC Ambulance Service and the first responder agencies that engage in the pre-hospital care system go to those with simultaneous dispatch. And so the first person get there, does the best they can to do what they can to help. And
do you know, like in regards to the overdose calls, is there any follow-up from fire ambulance with the individuals like as far as like trying to get them into care or get them any sort of help?
Generally, that follow-up doesn't occur on the fire side of things and the municipal side because we're not in the medical business per se. I do know that the BC Ambulance Service does have community paramedics. Now, how engaged they get on overdose calls, I'm not privy to that information, but they do a lot of work in the community with community paramedicine, which is a new branch of service. That would help in that. And I know our social development coordinator does have connections in that industry. She might be able to look into that and see who is doing that work.
Yeah. And just really quick, if I may, with this, you said you had 70 calls that were overdose. Is that right in the last quarter? Yeah,
72 calls that are overdose related.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Were a number of those the same individuals?
We have a core population that we're serving, but surprisingly, there are quite a high number of overdose calls that are happening in housed people that are the working public in our community.
Okay, great, thank you.
Interesting. Councillor Stetsky.
I'm just wondering how our first responders are dealing with all of these overdose calls, which are very difficult calls, and whether there are supports in place to help them.
Yeah. So inside the City of Cranbrook Fire Department, we do have a very progressive wellness and health and wellness program led by staff and supported by myself and the city. We're doing a lot of really good proactive work in the province of British Columbia, and the City of Cranbrook, I'm proud to say, is very actively engaged in that proactive work with respect to staff's mental health and wellness. But like every other fire service in British Columbia that does pre-hospital care, is that it is tiring. It's a lot of work. It's really hard work, and that coupled with the increase in wildfire seasons and the intensity that those are, and the increase in fire calls that come with those hard to house populations is yeah, we're working really hard at this point.
Just let them know that they have our full support.
I will. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Scotty, certainly when I looked at these numbers, kind of coming from that background, boy, I was blown away. I cannot believe the increase in these numbers. So I think it's important if you can continue to keep us updated quarterly. And I think that you got to do what you got to do on the operational end, provide us with the statistics, but this is certainly indicating to me that as a council, as local government, we've got some work to do on the provincial level. There's a significant cost to our community when you're seeing increases at this level. I mean, it's going to be a staffing consequence, but not just staffing. We're talking, equipment and resources are being taxed, and those costs have gone up significantly. I believe we're going to, it was Prince George as a resolution coming up at the UBCM for local governments to pursue cost recoveries or some kind of assistance from the province. In my mind, certainly the overdose side is no different than when COVID came along. This is, kind of public health is a provincial responsibility. There was money available for COVID. There has to be money available, to help local government that's actually supporting the province, in these endeavors. I also see here too, and I'm really surprised at this, in one quarter, community the size of Cranbrook, strokes, 26 strokes and 16 cardiac arrests. That's pretty profound. I'm not asking for a technical, an observation from your side. Is this a result of maybe COVID and no contact, with early diagnosis or no contact, with doctors?
Mayor Price, happy to speak to that one. So I'm not a doctor, but I can say that in our experience, these numbers are high. And it does appear that the downstream consequences of low call volumes during the COVID period we're experiencing them now. And the general public is experiencing a lot more severe health conditions, and they're using 911 more frequently and for more significant issues. And so we're seeing it right across the spectrum with police, fire, and ambulance. And we're all experiencing those struggles at this point. It does appear that we're going to keep getting busier. This trajectory, it doesn't seem to be slowing down, and that's why CAO Furcho did ask me to present this to council prior to the public this quarter. And we do plan on continuing to update council as the business is changing around us, because our environment is changing and we're trying to do our best to respond to it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think one final observation is I know there are people in the community that question, why are we providing, medical services, a first responder program? That was a decision of a council back in the 90s. And, and it was pretty typical of most municipalities starting to provide that assistance because they identified that the province pre-hospital care wasn't delivering the level of services required in some communities. So certainly now, people don't want to question this. When you look at these types of numbers, we have 2 cars available in Cranbrook, during the day, ambulance. There's calls. These are just the fire department's calls. There's calls on top of these that the ambulance are going to regularly, that the fire departments, the first responders, not being called out to anymore. You start looking at those call volumes. If we weren't supplementing that service, I would really question the level of care that the citizen in this community would be receiving right now if we were relying a lot on ambulance. No criticism to the ambulance, they are making some inroads, but without the fire department's first responder program, make no mistake, there would be a lot more suffering and social issues in the community. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Scott. Up next is from Engineering Development Services regarding the City of Cranbrook Active Transportation Plan, public engagement. Can I ask Santana Patton to provide an update, please?
Unfortunately, you have me.
Wow.
I figured why ever sit online for an hour and a half? So
You're good.
I'm here on behalf of Santana, the community planner, and Curtis Mummery, the manager of roads and infrastructure, just to provide you with an exciting update that we are now in the process of the public engagement part of the active transportation plan. So I know it's something we've been talking about for a while. It's now underway. So we just wanted to highlight that the project website is available at cranbrook.ca/active transportation. It includes project information and a public survey. We were going to be doing hard copy surveys that will be delivered to seniors housing, as well as available here at City Hall in the front desk of engineering. And the team is going to be hosting a couple pop-up events on Tuesday, July 11th at the Clock Tower Square from 11:30 to 2:30, and this Saturday, July 15th at the Cranbrook Farmers Market. So anyone who has an interest in active transportation and wants to provide their feedback on where this plan can go, has those opportunities to start providing that information. So,
Thanks, Rob. Questions, comments? Good. Last update is from Economic Development regarding Choose Cranbrook and the data portal. Darren Burr is going to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Just bear with me here. Going to test out the audio visual equipment in here. And I'm just going to share my screen. Ross, I might get everything set up there. Thank you. That was easy. Right. So, okay. Thanks, Ross. Yeah, it just works, right? I can just scroll around. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to give a quick update on Choose Cranbrook. A few considerable updates on the site. So everyone knows it's our economic development website and data portal. It's a hub for business growth and investment in the city. And this platform continues to evolve, providing invaluable resources and insight for entrepreneurs, investors, and community members alike. With the latest update, we've further enhanced the user experience, expanded our data offerings, and implemented new features to empower individuals to make and organizations to make informed decisions. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the Choose Cranbrook Newcomers Guide. So this is available on our homepage. We can either go to the menu, or as we scroll down the page here, you'll see that there's a tile that says Newcomers Guide. We'll click on this. So this page here was created to be simple and easy to use, visually pleasing. There's hyperlinks that lead users to relevant government, agency, and stakeholder websites for further information. The guide aims to provide newcomers with a seamless and enjoyable experience, facilitating their understanding and access to resources in our city. I'll just go through a couple of the pages here. There's quite a lot of information on these pages. I won't go through all of them. I will kind of skim through these pages. I just want to show the depth of the website and encourage all council members to visit the website and explore the page when you have time. But as we go down here, see, here's some pages, live here, work here, do business here. So we've funneled some of the information into different pages. So if we were to go to the live here page, this would talk specifically about moving to Cranbrook. Again, I'm just going to scroll down this page. There's a lot of information here. I'm just really trying to show the depth of the site. All these hyperlinks here work. So if we come over here, we want to go to see what was a link to Fernie or Kimberly or Cranbrook Tourism's website. Again, this page is just meant to be easy, visually appealing, and provide all the information. You'll see here, we also link to different local groups and organizations and events. So if I were to click on this, I'm sure you guys all believe me, it will go off to the Spirit of the Rockies website, right? So. Let's go here. Okay. Work here, do business here. Same idea. I'll just show this one little plug here for council, but you guys made this page and there should be a picture of you on here somewhere. There we go. There's council, but in any case, all these pages were designed and to be easy to use and just visually appealing. Now there is actually a newcomer's guide, which is a PDF. This newcomer's guide has links, hyperlinks inside the document. So I'll just kind of show this off for everybody here. But if we were to go to this page here and someone wanted to get a social insurance number, a passport, whatever the case may be, as we highlight and hover over one of these links, it will take you off to that corresponding government website. We do have point of POS displays. I call them table talkers, little 8.5 by 11. You saw it in the meeting in the meeting package with a QR code. These are set up at the chamber, the library, the visitor center. The idea is that if someone were to come in and have some questions that the staff out, these are migrants and they're going to be maybe wanting to move to Cranbrook, able just to, with their phone, scan that QR code and it will take them off to the Choose Cranbrook webpage. So really happy with how this all turned out. Oops, go back here. The other page I wanted to highlight is the Tanaka Homelands page. So this is right here. This page was written in collaboration with the TKL, or Tanaka's Language and Knowledge Keepers. There's a link that will take you off to the page, to their website to talk about the creation story. This history page here was written by TKL and speaks to the history of Cranbrook from the Tanaka's perspective. So we're really quite happy with this. It also incorporates some of the Tanaka Homelands imagery and programming that came out of that campaign that we had last year. And it invites visitors to connect with the land through an itinerary. This has all been, as mentioned, worked with TKL and approved by them. And it's just really meant to show people the connection to the land that Tanaka have. So, and then lastly, we'll go to our data portal. So the data portal is continually getting updated. You can find it from our website by just clicking on the data portal. This has a whole bunch of, I like to think, some cool features on it. You'll notice up along the top is a drop-down menu. So as you hover over each of these, it will take you off to different pages. I won't do it now, but quite a lot of information here. All this information is from StatsCan, CMHC, publicly accessible, trusted, and reliable data sources. Along the left-hand side here of a quick facts are just some highlights that we have some control over in our, just along the left-hand side here. These are all just to be conversation starters. Actually, Mayor Price and I were on a call with a developer recently, and I was able to pull up the demographics on our community in real time with the developer, and it was quite a nice little touch to be able to have these conversations with accurate data. Now, a couple of the things that you'll see included in the update is you'll see at the bottom here. This is a footer on all the pages. So if someone in the community has a data set that they'd like to see included, they can make that request. We're always looking for more information and different data sources. So we felt like giving the public an opportunity to make some recommendations would save us a little bit of work in the long term. So yeah, a couple other things. So in our business count, so we get data from the business registry that will count the businesses and sort them by 2- and 4-digit business, their NAICS codes. So in any case, we have quite a deep and wide variety of information here. I'll show one more thing. Just if there is anyone that ever wants to, if there's any reports or any kind of information you want to share with community members, we've created this page here that has all our documents, reports, and resources. I kind of cater it to economic development type documents. So, you know, we're not going to have the garbage route or the bus passes or anything like that on here. It's all economic development related websites. And they're all here just for people to be able to download them. Community comparison report. You just click on it and the documents are there. So I just wanted to thank Mayor and Council for your time today. Just one note, if you know, if and when you do want to keep up on the things that I'm up to, Choose Cranbrook is where I post most of the news and highlights, and it's the best way to keep track of some of the things that we're up to. So just open the floor for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Darren. Council? I've sat down with Darren and actually went through both of these with him some time back, and certainly, as he said, we met with a developer, and the developer had a few questions, and Darren brought him into the portal there, and the guy was quite actually blown away, you know, and he got the link right away. And he says, "I'm going to do it. I've got some homework to do right now on Cranbrook." So, and it is extremely thorough. I would suggest that, you know, if council, you know, go in and have a look at it. Got any questions or you want to spend some time, Darren probably more than happy if you make an appointment. So Darren, and you know, pick anywhere from half an hour to 4 hours to get through it, and he'd be more than happy to show you through it and how it all works. But there is absolutely unbelievable data on there. I couldn't believe the amount of data that we had available. So great job, Darren.
Thank you, Mayor Price.
Moving on to correspondence, we have one item of correspondence tonight from Father Andrew Applegate, Rector of St. Aidan Orthodox Church, dated June 26, 2023. And he's thanking the city for approving the resident direct grant request to help fund their Breakfast for Volleyball program. Discussion, received for information? Received for information. Thank you. That brings us now to Mayor and Councilor's report. We'll start with Councilor Stetsky's side tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of quick things. Summer Sounds, of course, has returned to Rotary Park. It's now on Thursdays from 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock. You get to see two great bands and do some outdoor dancing. That's a great way to spend Thursday evenings. And it used to be Saturdays, and so basically it's important that people know that it's now on Thursdays. One concern, I had a resident come to me with concerns about the graveyard, and it's through you, Mayor, to CAO Furcho, a couple of questions. This individual had their husband interred about a year ago, and the surface is still just basically dirt. And so they're wondering what happens in the graveyard, like who's responsible for doing what when it comes to gravesite management. And the second concern was around dogs running loose in the graveyard area. So a couple of quick questions, if I may, on that.
Certainly. Maybe Tony, you want to take that one?
Thank you, Mayor Price, through to Councillor Stetsky. Yeah, so in the graveyard, what happens is we after a burial, we plant seeds to get us by till we have a number of graves to actually install sod. So the sod's on the schedule for this month, and we usually try and go through the process a couple times a year. With regards to the dogs, dogs are allowed through the cemetery bylaw. They are allowed in the cemetery if they're on a leash, and with the condition that they're supposed to pick up after their dog. So that's the current bylaw.
Thank you. I think that'll answer the questions from the resident. I'd also at this point like to give notice of motion for our September 11th council meeting. And the motion will be related to potential amendment to bylaw 4123, 2023, incorporating further consultation from social service agencies in Cranbrook and reviewing the effectiveness of the bylaw over the summer. So what we want is the best possible bylaw for Cranbrook. I appreciate the hard work that's gone into getting where we are today and the bylaw that's in place. But I do think we should be consulting further with some of the social agencies in Cranbrook and reviewing the effectiveness of the bylaw when we get into the fall.
Thank you. Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to take this moment to thank the staff and the volunteers that were involved in the Canada Day Festival. I brought my kids down and they got their faces painted and ate food in the food trucks and danced to the music. And I just thought the event was a great local free event. So thank you.
Councilor Brissette.
Yes, on the weekend, I participated in the Cranbrook Garden Club Open Garden Day, and that was great. But one of the things that came up was at one of the gardens, they had a fountain, and it was using an old piano, and it had been repurposed. And the owner, I was commenting on how I thought that was pretty cool, and the fellow commented that, you can't, it's hard to give away old pianos these days, and how he had approached city council about pianos in downtown areas for people to play on or buskers, and but that hadn't gone anywhere. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I wasn't aware of it. So anyways, I bring it up tonight. There are other communities that do this. Kelowna is one of them. There are actually multiple places that have them, and it certainly goes along with our downtown revitalization ideas, and I thought it would be something that we could look at. So I brought it up tonight. And that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So last week I had the pleasure of attending a barbecue for community partners at the Travelodge at the temporary shelter. And although I could only stay a short time, it was a pleasure to meet Sam, the manager, and to meet several of the staff members there. And Sam gave us a quick tour, and I hadn't thought of how many people work there, but there are 25 staff who work at the temporary shelter at the Travelodge, 13 full-time and 12 part-time. And just want to, yeah, it was a pleasure to meet those folks and appreciate the work that they do. So that was a great opportunity. And as well, I was very pleased to attend the first Summer Sounds session of the year and look forward to seeing lots of people out on Thursday evenings as the summer goes on, and would also echo what a great day the Cranbrook Garden Club's garden tour was. And thanks to everybody who put so much work into their yards and inspiring for people like me who need some inspiration. So that was great.
Well, thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. And again, congratulations to the Fisher Peak Performing Arts for the successful first show of the Summer Sounds. Great event. This year, as well as changing it to the Thursday, our city staff have now incorporated the whole area of the concert as one big beer garden. So you're not crowded in a little corner and there's your kids over there. It's now one big family-friendly beer garden at the Summer Sounds. So another good reason to go down and check out the music and the dancing. Speaking of the Garden Club, there was I caught this on Global BC. I think it's Kitsilano down in Vancouver. They have boulevards and everything else, and instead of cutting them, they're planting wildflowers. So they're creating these wildflower meadows. I'm thinking our whole strip of our boulevards on both sides of the highway and all those other places, something to think about. Wouldn't you sooner see some beautiful wildflowers growing there than weeds and the need and cost to be constantly cutting the grass? So I'll leave that with you to consider, wildflowers. And with that, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff. I think the only thing I've got to comment on is Canada Day. I had the opportunity to present citizenship awards to students from Laurie and Parkland Middle Schools and Mount Baker High School students. And I spent a little bit of time chatting with them a little bit, and you can certainly see why they were nominated for the awards, and they certainly are worthy. So congratulations to those candidates and those recipients of those awards. Other than that, I have nothing else, and I'll call for adjournment. Councillor Ray, Councillor Brissette, all in favor? Sure.